Welcome to Inside the Numbers, the Rock Daisy Sports Performance Podcast with your host, Coach Cody Hughes. Join us to unlock the secrets behind athletic performance as we break down the metrics and transform your collected data into powerful, actionable insights. Tune in for exclusive interviews with top coaches and professionals who are revolutionizing their training programs with data. If you love what you hear, please share it on X, Instagram, and YouTube, and tag us at RockDaisyAMS.
So I wish I would have had that opportunity as an intern, because like I interned at Mississippi State, and then they're like, hey, we got you set up, if you do a good job, where you can, run with us all day, and then go over and help make a little spending money, maybe able to afford getting a bite to eat every once in a while while you're an intern,
Yeah, and then as you know, like our profession's kind of weird in that it's like you spend 4 years to get your undergraduate, which doesn't quite give you the hands-on experience that qualifies you to be hired to be a full-time strength coach. And so then you have to do at least one internship, maybe two, and then maybe a GA position to where you get your master's degree. And next thing you know, it's been 6 years that finally determines that somebody's willing to hire you. It's not always that case, but it typically is. And tricky thing with the whole internship deal, as a 21-year-old, thinking that like I need one of these internships to qualify myself and to get the true experience that I'm not getting at school, you think big school, big name, let me go here and I'm going to all of a sudden, be qualified because of just the association aspect of maybe even osmosis of just being around big time athletics. And sometimes some of the least coaching experience is found in those situations because they already have all the staff that they need and they don't really need a lot of coaching help. You're there to fill a very specific role of setup and cleanup and logistic management and all those kinds of things. So, and that's just the reality. You do want that SEC experience, like coming to Tennessee, but like, there are a lot of amazing coaches there coaching already. So you get some responsibility. The coaches here at Tennessee are phenomenal about the educational piece, and it's a quality internship experience. But like, how many reps are they getting actually coaching and teaching without restraint? Without a whole lot of somebody kind of watching over every step and concerned that they might say the wrong thing. And now this athlete their progress has been slowed, but rather in this environment, we need all the coaching help we can get. So it's like, man, it's the perfect 1-2 punch of we pay really well, come here at nighttime for 2-3 hours, help with a couple sessions, still, get in bed at a reasonable hour, and your alarm goes up at 4:30 and you're back in SEC land. But like to do that 2-3 days a week and have kind of the freedom to really, not that our kids don't deserve the absolute best here, but like make the mistakes a little bit of I was trying to teach this kid a hinge. It's not a mistake, but it's getting the reps of troubleshooting here and there with an athlete that otherwise is not an adult, and they don't maybe respond as well to certain cues that you've heard. And now you're kind of having to navigate different skill sets of cues. But the cool thing on the kids side is that they get to be around 22, 23-year-olds who are passionate, full of energy, they can connect with, who generally love and care about them. And they're like, man, I remember when I was your age, that kind of thing. And plus they're at Tennessee, who most kids here have a lot of questions about what life is like, inside those walls. And so just that cool exchange of information and what's it like working with James Pierce and Nico and all these guys. And it's a really cool dynamic, man, of like the pairing, like what you would ideally want with private sector and collegiate truly going hand in hand. And it's so mutually beneficial for everybody. Like, it's awesome. I couldn't have asked for a better situation in terms of giving us talented people to help our kids who are great coaches usually. And this is not necessarily their first internship. Most cases, we get people that have been at some really impressive stops before they got here, and sometimes at private sector places, not just collegiate. So usually they fit right in with what we're doing, which is awesome.
So knowing that, and you guys having a lot of turnover and having this in your back pocket, and you said you were on part-time coach number 7, I am sure the story of you learning how to replicate yourself or being able to immerse somebody inside of a system is it's a make or break. I mean, that's being able to onboard a coach pretty quickly. So let's talk about maybe how that started and where it's grown, maybe some things you've learned. And I know your journey as a coach, being at the college level, being at GAC, being at the high school level, and now being in the role that you're in now. You're once an assistant for Gary Schofield, and learning now that I feel like you're in such a leadership position now, and replicating yourself and having people see through your lens is it seems to me when I look at leadership, that's kind of the steps that you end up taking anyway. Because I know in my role as well, if I'm not really good at replicating myself through my assistant or through my interns, our program's going to suffer because I have to think about bigger things too. And it can't always be, the one on the training floor, and neither can you. So I'm curious of what that onboarding or maybe, replicating yourself inside your system, what that story looks like.
Yeah, it starts with our handbook that is absolutely essential and ongoing. And if I learned anything from Gary with my time at GAC, I mean, he was, the master of really like organized curriculum and digestible material to help empower somebody and equip somebody to be good at their job. I mean, Gary was just phenomenal at that, with his own athletes as well as his staff. And he was the department chair of PE at GAC for a long time. He wrote many syllabi for not only our class, but other classes. So he just did such a good job of packaging all that I walked into that, and that was the standard. I mean, he had devoted hours on his own, time on the weekends to make sure that he did replicate himself and the standard and successfully communicate the standards. I mean, just like anything else in leadership, to your point of kind of describing what leadership looks like, in your mid-30s and trying to keep the standards high and growing and better as a strength coach with coaches underneath you, you do need to just be all the better at communicating exactly what the standard is, just like anything else. So if I do that and do that well, and it's very clear, and then it comes down to you as the assistant strength coach, or whoever that is we've hired, can you meet that standard? Can you meet that expectation? And how far off are you from that expectation naturally with your current skill set? And do I have the time and the energy to catch you up to the standard that I need you to be at? And if the answer is yes, because you're not too far off, then great. Like the time we're going to spend together is going to be in getting you up to speed, if you will. So
how long do you think it takes for you to be able to answer that question?
It depends, man. I mean, really aim for 2 weeks. Like our onboarding process is like a week or two. Like we're pretty quick here, mostly because of the nature of the intern. I don't call our coaches here interns, and I'm very clear about that. I don't want anybody calling them interns. Like, sure, they're an intern at Tennessee, but you're not an intern here. You're a coach, and you're on the floor. You're a coach. You have a name. You have a story. You have skills, and I quickly put them up on this pedestal where they belong. Like you're going to be treated as a coach. I mean, you put your work in, and some young professionals are ready for that, and they're so grateful for that acknowledgement and that opportunity to be called coach, and it's such a great thing for them to have young people looking up to them. And some of them, it's like, man, it makes them a little nervous, and it's like they have a hard time really owning up to that title and that skill set. So again, that is up to me then to be around them enough and to watch them and support them as they navigate that, and within our system, can you execute the drills and teach well? And thankfully our system is pretty well organized, and I had months to build it even before we opened 2 years ago. Literally 2 years ago, as we're celebrating our birthday here next month. But within those 2 years since, we polished things up, made it better. It's pretty easy to learn kind of how our operation goes from a strength coach perspective, to where I think most people would thrive here with that. And okay, here are the exercises, here are the progressions, here's all the nuances of how I navigate this kid's schedule versus that one. And So I say it's easy to understand. It's not always easy to execute, and so they're challenged big time from the get go. But yeah, to answer your question, man, 2 weeks is about all the time I have before I'm ready to get them on the floor and get them working. And it's the semester turnover of they finish their internship at Tennessee, can't really afford to live here, beyond that, or maybe they offer them a paid internship over there as well, and so it's all just dependent on their personal circumstances as well. I mean, our job is to get them a full-time job. Like, and you know how passionate I am about internships in general and empowering our profession. Like, I care so deeply about the quality of our profession that I don't want to just selfishly keep these part-time interns here for as long as I can and squeeze all the juice out of it. Say, no, man, I want to get you to where you can go out and get that first full-time job, which is very hard, unfortunately, in our
Right.
profession, especially if it's collegiate. And so just on that side note real quick too, it's like, thankfully I've had experience as a head Division I strength coach. I've had experience as a head college prep school strength coach, and now leading this place in the private sector. I can speak very candidly and confidently about what skill sets are probably most appropriate for those three subsectors of our profession, and what kind of passions or distinct coaching styles are better for those. And I try and communicate that really early on as I get to know our coaches quickly. Is like, man, let's start getting you on a track to what's probably going to be the best fit for you as a strength coach, because as you know, man, it's so different from each other. It's like
Sure.
nursing, So my wife's a nurse, my brother's a nurse, my mom's a nurse, and for my wife, she worked with adults when she moved here, and she absolutely hated it. She's like, "Give me back to newborns and labor and delivery," whereas my mom works great with ICU, and my brother's like in med surg. And so it's just like any other profession, man. Like, you want to be a nurse, or you want to be a coach, and you want to be a strength coach, but what is probably ultimately the best fit for you? And that's not clear oftentimes in the academic world, and maybe an internship that you've had. And it's definitely very confusing in a collegiate setting. Like, they get there and they just are just grinding away, hoping for a chance to maybe get that big job, which I get. Those jobs pay really well. Once you get those big jobs, I mean, you got assistant positions paying, 120, 150, and you might only be working women's basketball making that much. So I get it. If you want to roll the dice on that and bust your butt, awesome. But if you also like having a family one day and want to understand how challenging that can be with raising kids and working those kinds of hours at the same time, like, that's what I want to be very open with in that. And so yeah, man, like, big time emphasis on getting them up to standards for us, but also caring deeply about their professional pathway and helping them grow through that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know you guys have been so adamant about that part of development in the first place, not just with your athletes, but with your coaches. Excuse me. Whew, sorry, I had to clear my throat there. But let's shift gears a little bit into the training system, and knowing that obviously the experience at Triple F is at a high level, and part of your meats and potatoes in the true product you're giving. And one thing I want to dive into that I'm just so curious to learn about is your progress report, okay, and the assessment that you guys do with your athletes, because it's very in depth. And when I look at it, I've got a screenshot pulled up from one of your Instagram posts from one of your athletes, and there's a lot of information on there. And I want to know, one, I want to kind of go through it a little bit with you, and I want to learn from you. So let's walk through what it means. We can talk about the history of it. If you need to give context, give context. But we're going to start off with, like, obviously you're collecting quite a bit of data points here. And some of the obvious are simple. When you onboard somebody into your guys' memberships, you're getting their birthday, right? What grade they're in, where they go to school, what sports they play, what position they play. And you're getting height, you're getting body weight, you're getting wingspan. I see you've got a spot for body fat percentage. Maybe, do you guys have an in-body or anything? Do you guys?
We have an Omron, or we
yeah.
can go Bod Pod with a supplement store here that we trust, Eddie's Health Shop. They do a good job, and they charge like
Sweet.
$25. You can go get a full Bod Pod. But yeah, that's kind of more optional. They don't have to. That's not something like you have to do in our evaluation, but it's definitely there for the kids who want.
Gotcha. And then I've got Help me understand PAH. What's that?
Yes, now we're getting to the good stuff already. So, were you there at Ensworth when Des Ryan spoke about biological maturation?
Yes, I was.
So,
Yeah.
and he used the plyomat, and we talked about measuring kids' heights, and he was at FC Arsenal at the time that he was big into biological maturation, but he was at Satanta College, and now he's
Yeah.
elsewhere now. But yeah, Des spoke very specifically about biological maturation, primarily with boys, in that in his world at FC Arsenal with their youth athletic development academy, they would get highly talented young people, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, who would commit to a contract to that basically to live at this academy. And the parents would get a certain amount of money, a month, and they would develop them. And it's like you're just going to live and breathe football, soccer.
That's like the
And
true club model in Europe.
yeah, and
right?
that's commonplace in Europe and elsewhere, right? It's
Right.
not as common here. But essentially, like, you would be developed accordingly and still have school and all that stuff. And then if you end up being good enough to sign a contract with a professional sports team at the age of probably 16 or 17, I guess, then they would actually have ownership of those contract rights. And so that's the financial gain from a club standpoint, these elite level clubs who do these academies. Yes, they're paying these parents a lot of money in the early years to develop them, but then they own basically that contract when they're of age. So anyway, as you would imagine, lots of money floating around. You would want some pretty high level thinking and high performance models with that. And so biological maturation is huge in that not every boy matures at the same rate. So one boy could chronologically be a 13-year-old, but biologically be a 14.7-year-old. And then another boy could be a chronological 13-year-old and be a biological 12.7-year-old.
So I'm seeing that on your report. You've got a chronological age and a biological age. Okay, cool.
Yes. So we have young people in our place, probably our average age is 14. So I mean, and there's mostly boys here. So when I heard this speak on this topic 2.5 years ago, and we were opening Triple F, I'm like, I have to find a way to implement this into our system because not every 13-year-old is the same. I mean, just look at 14U baseball teams or the Little League World Series. It's like Little League World Series, 10 to 12-year-olds, and you wouldn't know who's 10 and who's 12. Like,
no,
the 10-year-old could look like the 12-year-old and 12-year-old could look like the 10-year-old. So common sense then tells me to say, like, I need to treat their biological age as is and train them accordingly because there's 14-year-old freshmen playing varsity, like at left tackle. And one of them is our own son, his son Brody, who's now 16. He was 6'5" when he was 14. Yeah.
I'm so surprised.
Maybe he just drank a lot of milk growing up and, those hormones accelerated the process. Who knows? But at the end of the day, yes, he was already going to be 6'5" or 6'6". So that's what PAH is, predicted adult height. He just got there way sooner. And so I think on that same report where it says PAH is
percentage
77 inches or whatever it is, there's a percentage of that. That's what determines biological age.
Okay.
So biological age is what percent am I, according to normative data, of my predicted adult height am I right now? So like if I'm...
Is that just like, hey, if I've got, a 16.3-year-old boy, right? You find that data of normative data of your predicted adult height. What's your reliable source there?
So Des provided all that to me and to everybody there. It was this massive Excel spreadsheet that already has the normative data from multiple research studies over the past few decades and formula built in there. It's huge. Like it's like probably 30 columns wide of all these things that are talking to each other. So I took that, I'm a Google Sheets guy. And so I moved that into my Google Sheets deal to where as soon as I type in, because this is all the data you need today's date, whatever it is that you took that, because that's what you're figuring out, their date of birth, their current height, current weight, and then mom's height, dad's height.
Oh, okay.
And so once you type that in, the spreadsheet does its magic and it's really complex formula. This is like,
Sure.
for you and I, it's like, it's you, if you looked at it, you'd be like, I wouldn't know how to reverse engineer this. Like it's some crazy formulas that are going on, crazy math. It then spits out what their predicted height is, what percent of that they are now. And again, it's that percentage that determines biological age. So to kind of summarize it, for a 15.3-year-old boy, they, according to normative data, should be at 97.6% of their predicted adult height. For like
Okay.
across like if they measured thousands of boys by the age of 15.3, they're at 97.6%. But of course, there's the deviations from that. So if I'm 99.6% of that, I'm actually typical of a 16.5-year-old.
Interesting.
And well, it also assumes that, like, again, it's all normative data. It also assumes that by the time I'm 18, I'm fully grown, which isn't always the case. You've been in college athletics. I've been in college athletics. I've had basketball players grow an inch or two in college, which is wild. And that's hard to explain. And then, but for girls, full maturation typically is 15. So like it tops out at 15 where boys are 18. It's such a big disparity there, which is
right.
Kind of cool to see as we go through this process with so much data with these kids and watching the 15-year-old girl who's already like a great mover and pretty explosive and like,
sure,
compared to a 15-year-old boy who, still struggling with some of those things. So it's really cool, man. The whole biological maturation thing is really like a whole podcast episode in itself, probably.
Sure. Can you share that spreadsheet with me? I didn't get my hands on that for some reason.
I'm just kidding.
Can't? Because
I can kill you, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm just really curious to look at it. I think that's very interesting.
To me, it's like it's negligence not to use that at this point. Like once you've been educated on it and you've heard it and talked about it and you're training that age group of 13, 14-year-olds, like, I love communicating it to the kid and to the parent as an educational opportunity of like, look, you're a late bloomer. Like your score this because you're just not physically as mature as your peers right now, and that's okay. Like that's
the opportunity to educate there too, right?
Yeah.
Like
there's a level playing ground when everybody's 17. It's
right.
Like you're junior in high school. Unfortunately, that's probably when everything shakes out. But like for right now, man, you're gonna have to freaking scrap for the next 2 or 3 years, and it is what it is. And so what's so cool is with Lee's, he has 2 boys and 2 girls. The oldest, literally 2 whole years ahead from a biological standpoint. The youngest boy, Brock, is like a year behind. It's not like that dramatic,
wow.
but it's kind of closing that gap. So guess who the scrappy one is? It's not like, Brody's a stud too, and he knows how to flip the switch and put people on the ground. But like Brock is the one that's like, man, he's just nasty, because he has to be. It's
right.
like he's already going to be like 6'1", 6'2", so that's awesome. But he's just later to get there. And I've seen that many times with kids who are like, the parents are like confused. Like, he's supposed to be really tall. It's like, but he's the same height as his peers right now. It's like, yeah, he's just a late bloomer. Like, he's going to be gigantic. Just be patient. But
right.
For whatever reason, man, God had plans of just keeping you, reining you back from a rate perspective. And height really tells the story of all those. So, and this formula works as young as for 4-year-olds. So like I've been using it with my kids. You could probably use it for your boy now coming up.
My son's tall. He's been in like 98th percentile. Since he was born. So he's. I remember he started kindergarten this year, so we're fired up about that. And he walked in and we met the principal, and she was like, "Kyle, you're a kindergartner?" And we're like, "Yeah." I'm not super sure where he got, but I want to plug our numbers in that and see.
Yeah, so is that like he's going to be really tall one day, or is that he's just maturing really fast?
Sure.
So
that's so awesome. Yeah. Now, on the reverse side of things, what about like, you got the Little League All-Stars, the ones that may not, because I played with a guy in Little League who was unbelievably good, but like, as a 17-year-old, he threw this exact same miles an hour as he did as a 12-year-old as a lefty, and ended up being a dominant Little League player to a soft lefty relief pitcher. Still a good player for us, but on the flip side, it kind of seems like tough news. Like, yeah, like he's kind of already not an early bloomer. He's already kind of where he's at, based off of this data. that can seem kind of disappointing, right?
For sure. And I mean, thankfully for us, at that age and what we do here and develop, like that's, we're not the coaches we're not the sport coaches that are like, pushing kids to perform. We're just in development mode always. So no matter where you are, we're going to just keep developing you.
That's
And
true.
but so it's not like we really experience that necessarily, but yeah, man, you talk about what is somebody's true ceiling and are they hitting that maybe early? And that would be the caveat to that conversation of educating parents. Like, hey, I know you're struggling because so-and-so is so much faster than you right now or so much stronger than you right now. But, like he also is just matured a little bit faster and maybe his ceiling is already, being met at an early stage. Not that you want that for anybody, but like that could just be the reality. Whereas your ceiling is much higher, so we just have more time to get there. But man, like I've just experienced so far with training so many 6th and 7th graders here, which I love. Working in the middle school age. It's funny how I went from like college to high school to middle school now. But
Oh yeah.
man, like some of them respond so quickly to training where they're just like numbers just jump to the roof in like a month or two, or some of them it's like hardly any progress whatsoever, even though they're busting their butt and they're lifting and straining the same amount. So I even think about just the evidence in front of me of growth rate, not from a biological perspective, but like growth rate from a training perspective, like, because that's what a lot of parents ask me, like how realistically, how much better should he be getting? Like, shouldn't he be running 16 miles an hour by now? Like he went from 15.1 to 15.3. And it's like, man, sometimes like whether it's hormonal or whatever, the adaptations to training are also, based on genetics. They're based on some other things that are a little bit outside of our control, because like I'm watching these two kids like work as hard as each other, if not one maybe more than the other. And this one's just not seeing performance gains as quickly as the other one.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to explain why that is. He's getting better, but like for whatever reason, I mean, this kid over here is just like, big time jumps. And I'm seeing that in 16, 17-year-old untrained populations that are within 4 weeks, they're already seeing big gains. So yeah, that one's a hard thing to kind of put my finger on. Not that I feel like I'm ever supposed to, because it just goes to show that individually we're all so different and we're going to respond training differently. And we're going to just grow differently based on our DNA, but at the end of the day, everybody's getting better. And that's our job, our mission. Those progress reports quite literally only exist to show that. Like for myself, for the kid, as soon as I told Lee this, like as a business, like once we put these things on paper objectively and we say that this is now part of our system, like we are all accountable to this now. Like there's no hiding. It's like, I'm showing this to you now. We reassess later. You're investing financially in progress to be made, and if progress is not made, we all have to have an honest conversation about why that didn't happen. So there's a lot of places that aren't willing to do that, man, to be honest. In the private sector, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. Nothing actually gets put on paper. But
that's skin in the game right there.
Yeah, but real strength coaches aren't afraid of that stuff, man. Like I pride myself in being able to walk up to my sport coach and being like, bam, like,
yeah, we're going to deliver.
We just, I said, you see the before and after pictures. Sometimes the lighting helps a little bit, these posts online, but that's
no
like
flex, post flex, baby oil, lighting, grayed out.
I love it because it's like it's us as professionals saying we're freaking good at what we do, and that's just the athletics world that we're used to, especially high level athletics. Like that's how I continue to get good opportunities professionally, is because people have seen evidence of what we do here, and I'm not afraid of it. I'm also not afraid of having those conversations of why something didn't improve. And albeit it's rare, if everybody's doing the things that they should be doing, if something got a little bit worse, let's talk about it, man. Let's figure out why. Why did you get a little bit slower when your RSI went up and you gained 11 pounds? So maybe that affected it, but people, it's an educational thing big time with our parents and our kids, and also understanding that it's a process. So we call our whole product here LTAD, because long-term athletic development assumes that this is going to take time, and we're committed to the amount of time necessary to see growth and development. And again, a lot of other places don't do that either. So
100%. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head of putting skin in the game. has built-in accountability, but that's if we're truly in pursuit of trying to find truth or trying to find answers or trying to answer questions. And oftentimes the pursuit of trying to answer a question, especially in what we're doing is like in science or performance, it just leads to more questions. But that is the pursuit. It never ends. We're playing the infinite game, right? Is to keep playing the game and keep finding out answers. And the second part of your progress report here is your attendance chart, which obviously is going to be the first thing that we address if something isn't going right. If we don't show up, it's hard to get better. And I would venture to say, especially teaching our young people this, if you would just learn to show up consistently, you'll be ahead of a lot of this world, right?
Right.
And I'm sure that you guys push that message.
1,000%, man. That's why that attendance chart is where it is. It's one of the first things that people see. But I get into the weeds. Really, my primary role here is like, how do we get you here consistently? Because that is the real life stuff that's just hard, man. We're an after school or school program for the most part, and so having a relationship with coaches at the respective schools to be open about like, hey, what are you guys doing there? Because so and so is here, and we want to make sure we're not filling the same bucket. If that bucket's already overflowing, let's fill this other one. Not only the consistency of just getting you in the building, but the consistency of attacking a stimulus that's not there, which is just intelligent, training and approach to training. But I use that bucket analogy a lot because if you look at that radar chart, which Twitter's really conflicted about radar charts for some reason, but I love it. I think and people see that and they understand it because it's just
Twitter is conflicted about me saying to lift heavy. Like I got destroyed about that 2 days ago. But anyway, being funny.
It's more sports science. Twitter is conflicted about it. Strength coaches, I don't think we're too upset about the different visualizations that we use, but there's 8 qualities on there. There's size, flexibility, upper body power, lower body power, elasticity, acceleration, speed, and agility. So to me, I view that as 8 buckets. Again, this is a pretty broad way to view it because there's a lot of things that we do that affect multiple qualities at once. But if I'm profiling somebody and I want that honest feedback of like, man, you are really deficient in flexibility. Like I think the example that you're seeing that my friend Caden has given us permission to share his report. I'm on him about it. I'm like, dude, you got to stretch more. Like here, like follow this chart, follow this video. We have pliability prescription or subscription rather to follow when you're here in the facility. We have Normatec boost, cold tub, just anything to get your body in a better state.
When you guys do these evals, I don't need to cut you off, but and you see weakness, right? And you have a system in place to try to, that's kind of your point of individualization, and you kind of give the kids ownership, like, hey, you're not good at this. Like, and you could really move the needle with this common denominator of, man, you are stiff. So we're going to give you XYZ to either do at home or in the facility. Like, that just piqued my interest because now,
So rather than calling this, because the question that comes up a lot by parents is like, do you guys do sports specific training? It's like, no, we do individualized training. And then I begin to explain the point you just made. Like, individualized approach to anything is saying, let's actually just, according to these 8 qualities, which most people would argue those are a pretty good way to evaluate athleticism, and I had other really smart people help me with that, like Dr. Mike Martino. Like, he helped me build kind of this whole assessment structure, and I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just me making these decisions on what I think athleticism is and how to evaluate it. But if we are deficient in something, like, why are we wasting time refilling the same other buckets that are already like we're pretty good at? Like, I mean, we talk about RSI a lot, obviously in my world of plyometrics, and just the whole concept of even doing different plyos based on like the type of like athlete that I am. If I'm super elastic, maybe I shouldn't be doing a bunch of like springy, quick contact time stuff for volume when I'm already really good at that. Maybe I should be doing some loaded jumps instead and attacking lower body power, which is just kind of more the force part of the spectrum, So it's just simple common sense. If I'm already really good at something and I'm not very good at this other thing, let's spend more time working on that. That is very normal in the world of sports skill acquisition. Like, if I'm really good at my curveball, then, but my fastball is just all over the place. And maybe that's what I need to be spending more time on, or like different, shots in the gym. Like,
Right.
no, at the end of the day, it's not hard to explain that and sell people on it. But the challenge is logistically, I have a group of 21 kids, and some of the deficiencies are glaring, but for the most part, most of them they all need to get stronger. Just on your
Sure.
tweet about getting really strong, that really checks a lot of boxes. So you get a middle school boy really strong at chin-ups and single leg squats and all these other things, those other athletic qualities are going to benefit dramatically from that. I mean, you could literally say that all 8 qualities will benefit just from 3 strength exercises that they're getting better at, for that age group. But then you have, our stud right-hand pitcher junior who's got offers at the wazoo and might get drafted throwing, 94, 95, for him, it's like size is like literally the only thing that's like a deficiency, I mean, can we get him better across the board? Sure. But like, man, let's gain 10 pounds of muscle. What does that look like? And then now we're having that conversation of like, can you come in on Sunday? Can you just do this 45-minute routine of lat pull down, leg press, and hit some of these machines, things that we don't normally do during the week, and like just attack that. And what are you eating? Like how much, calories are you getting in? And so I love that approach to it because I never really if we're being honest, got to do that much of that. Definitely not GAC because the bell would ring. If 52 kids in the room and, there's 300 under my umbrella of like, 7 sessions back to back. And in a collegiate setting, I definitely did more of that. I would do one-on-one kind of meetings with athletes and talk about their diet and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's pretty commonplace in the collegiate setting to do not only sport specific, position specific, but also individual specific, really all this convergence of true sport development. But in high school, good luck with that, man. I mean, it's just like, it's so hard to individualize when you have there's just so little time essentially. And unless you have a system in place to do it, which is what we all aspire to do through Rock Daisy and everything else, like how do we show what these weaknesses are and then address them? And then, okay, cool with that. We did a good job of showing what they are, but it's like, man, how do I really give this kid what he needs when we've got 45 minutes, until the bell rings and like I have to supervise all this. I can't teach 17 things at once.
Right.
So thankfully here comes the private sector, which it took, the tail end of me being at GAC to really appreciate what the private sector has to offer, mostly because, for being honest, man, like as high school strength coaches, we're defensive. Like we want to be able to say that we can provide everything for our kids. And
100%.
the reality
And we
is,
want to advocate for more jobs. Like we want more schools hiring more strength coaches to be able to do a really good job. But we are limited in time. Just like I'm thankful I have a private sector gym in my town that's really good.
No.
But the common story
that you trust and are willing to truly meet those deficiencies. Because otherwise, if I'm going to recommend somebody, but they're just quite literally going over my head and doing the exact same things that I'm doing, well, that's a huge red flag. Because then now you have your own agenda, and you're not really that concerned about what the kid needs. Like, are you taking the time with all the time that you do have to help figure out what the kid needs, or are you just doing the same things that I'm doing as a high school person? And so that's really like, just for me to be able to say those words as a now private sector guy has really helped build trust around here with all these, really good strength coaches. East Tennessee has got some really phenomenal strength coaches and football coaches who we were taking them to lunch before we ever opened our doors because we wanted them to know who we were, that all we cared about were the kids. And we don't have some secret agenda and that we're trying to promote and we don't badmouth anybody, like we're very professional in everything we do. But at the same time, we know we can we can be super helpful because there are some things, whether it's facility wise, technology wise, that are limiting the growth of these kids at their schools. And a lot of it being that they don't have a full-time strength coach. But so yeah, anyway, I mean, what is that true relationship look like and what is it supposed to look like? And I think we do a pretty good job of it, mostly because I had skin in the game, like you said. So
yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I'm looking at the progress report. It seems if you're looking at it, if you guys that are listening or watching, go to Rich's Instagram and look at this progress report that they posted really recently. And obviously it looks like you guys formally test every quarter. Am I wrong on that? Is that right?
Yeah, we're actually Monday we're starting our fall assessment period, so it's a 2-week period. Labor Day kicks it off. 2 full weeks of, hey, when you come in, instead of your normal training session, we have other coaches available, mostly myself, to do your assessment. And it takes about an hour and 15.
Yeah.
And that was probably the hardest thing to figure out with all these tests that I wanted to do. Like, could we really do them all within just one setting versus a
Right.
GEC? You could do them across the whole week. And, like I would do only 3 things on Monday and only 3 things on Tuesday. And so we had the whole week, and it was like a big hype week. It was all done. All the kids are boxed in their respective classes and periods. Here, it's like, man, if you can come within these 2 weeks and it makes sense, like, come in, get it done. I'll be here. We got the force plates ready. We got everything, Vitruve, fired up. And so it takes the higher end technology to do it so concisely, because I can get a lot of information from force plates that
Sure thing.
might require 3 other tests and, to perform instead of just one. So, like just the braking force stuff, the propulsive stuff that you can get, you can, not quite make this complete inference, but close to basically saying, like, if somebody's braking relative propulsive or braking relative impulse is low according to the standard, then they're probably not great at squatting, lunging, or some good posterior chaining stuff of just quickly generating like that eccentric force to contribute to their jump, because this is all just in one jump. They do their jump and we move on.
This is all from a counter movement jump?
Yeah, counter movement jump. Stick across the shoulders felt more
Okay.
natural than hands on hips, but they're pretty close to each other. And then the propulsive one, which is now then the force that I've now carried out through the extension of my legs and
Right.
everything else, that those kids are usually really good at deadlifts and cleans and push presses, and so you can almost like develop a little bit of a strength program just from those 2 numbers and why
It
they're
kind of reminds me of strength deficit from Tim Karen a little bit, something
strength
similar.
deficit, but also like Sparta. I mean,
Sure.
Sparta science and what they did back in the day with their scans and like load, explode, and drive. It's a little bit of that. I think, my personal opinion, kind of went too far with it, with injury prediction and stuff. But programmatically, I like that if I'm deficient in load, then I need to be doing such and such exercises. So we're
Sure.
not quite at that point yet where we're that prescriptive, but I feel like I needed 2 years of data to be more confident with that. But we're getting close, man. I mean, every now and then I'll text Drake and bother him over at Hawken and say, hey, this is what we're seeing with braking relative net impulse, and, why am I seeing this? And this doesn't really make sense. So it just takes more data to be able to truly make things more prescriptive. I'm not quick to just jump into like, all right, this kid, I need to bucket him to do this.
Sure.
And this kid that, but that's the future. Like, I just think all strength conditioning at some point will evolve to doing some really intelligent tests with some really high-end technology and saying, this is what you need to do. So
Right.
let's do this, even
Yeah.
if it's in a group setting, like it's like, that's where you just start to see more and more. I just think 5-10 years from now, it's just going to be normal. So
Yeah. I mean, I think the best coaches can analyze and then have a strategy with speed, right? They can see. Experienced coaches do it with their eyes too. They see it and go. They just know, like, because they've seen it and been around it. And committing to collecting all that data takes a lot of discipline, because you want answers now, and sometimes it just doesn't come that easy.
Yeah.
What about your categorizations? So like, I'm looking at the color codes, and then you've got like, name them out: fast, freak, 4 to 5. What are they?
So I actually have a YouTube video. It's about 40 minutes of me kind of deep dive explaining.
Okay, cool. Yeah, y'all go watch that. Yeah.
All that. So we can drop that in the notes. But it's
Perfect.
like, okay, what is foundation? What does that mean? Why am I in that program? What is fit? What is fortified, fast, free? So those, I actually had Monster too at GEC.
Right.
So essentially, these are tracks, TRACT, in program allocations that after I've done my athleticism profile, I have a general need from a loading strategy standpoint. And if I am really strong, like relatively speaking, like in a GEC, we did way more strength tests. So we did, chin up relative, we did rear foot elevated split squat. We did, we tested like 5 or 6 different just strength movements. So like, you really knew how strong somebody was relative to their body weight and everything else. And then you could say, man, this kid is really freaking strong. So he should be in the fast program, which the fast program then takes so much of that strength and then works on power output, and so it's more velocity based, more speed based, load strategy in the weight room. Whereas fortified, if I'm in that program, that means I need to get really strong. And so most of our kids ended up scoring out at the high school level in that program, and were there for a whole year, maybe 2 years. And you want most of your kids at that age group to just be working on strength. I mean,
Right.
you hit it on Twitter. I mean, strength, just again, we're speaking from personal experience. Man, like my best athletes are my usually relatively strongest athletes according to their body weight. So, but that's so many ways to assess strength and so many movements. But at the end of the day, nobody got worse by getting stronger relative to their body weight and all these movements. But that didn't mean that fortified wasn't doing jumps. Didn't mean that they weren't doing velocity-based stuff. They were still doing some Olympic lifts. They were still doing med ball throws. And it just means that when they got on the team builder in their rack to pull up their lift for the day, it was a set and rep scheme that favored more pursuing load. So probably the best way to summarize those 5 categories would be foundation is all about motor pattern acquisition, like quality. Like, so the definition of success 4 weeks later in that program, I can move really well. And I can take myself through this pattern of movement really good. For fit, it's volume based. Definition of success is I can repeat the same quality movement under fatigue now. So like I'm doing 14 reps, 15 reps. Can I successfully repeat this under the now added, external factor of volume and fatigue, not really worried about load yet. Whereas fortified is more like all load based, still some volume because they're kids. So I was a big fan of 7s, 5s, 7s, and even 9s sometimes, depending on what we were doing, because you can get somebody really strong by doing 7s, or something. And then, so that would be the program that took the longest amount of time, and unfortunately in a high school setting with 45 minutes, like, you would want the kids in the fortified program to take more time to get all their loads in, because they needed more rest periods in between. And then, the fast athletes, mandatory, you had to have bar speed be tracked, and I did that for everybody else too, for quality control, but for sure for the power athletes and the fast program, like that is their definition of success. Could I take this 50% or 70-75% load and move it at a 0.55, because that would be the new standard now. Like that shows rate coding and like, rate of force development, in all different ways, eccentric, all kinds of cool stuff. So a little bit triphasic-y with their fast athletes, dropping into a quick isometric. So there's heavy kind of in a triphasic emphasis. And then free, it's almost like what do we do now? In a situation
keep all qualities going as much as we can.
I mean, like
guess.
At that point, it's like, dude, let's have fun. What did your college send you? Because chances are you're a Division I athlete. So like, here's the Clemson, football, like little handbook. So let's look through that. You're going to do that program, So it's like, we would just more have fun. I would make them wear a 20-pound weight vest everywhere they went, or like they would, still do a lot of volume. And the funny thing about this program allocation, and kids naturally, especially this generation, is that they feel like it's a identity thing, like, or like a hierarchy. They would walk in, but coach, you got me at fit. I thought it was fortified, and they would be like, just so upset that they were in the blue. They would see blue as negative and green as positive, and then they would see red as like, man, that's the peak. When in reality, I had a pro athlete in here the other day, and he was in foundation because he's, that's exactly where he needed to be. And that's the stimulus he needed, albeit for a week or two, to get back into getting in some volume. Like even when I go downstairs right now, like I'm going to prioritize volume because my body is just not in the shape that it needs to be. So educating the kids on these 5 tracks aren't necessarily indicative of like how valuable you are as a person or athlete, or even how athletic you are. So, these are just what I determine as the best program, most appropriate one for you in this moment, assuming that I have control over all these variables over time. But without complicating it too much, it's essentially a take on the block 0, block 1, 2, 3, 4 program that Schofield had done, and what Eric Cash does a lot at Dorman, and then also basically saying that this is our way of tracking development and giving you some sort of next level thing to try and hit. So the kids are always motivated and they're obsessed about it, and it's freaking awesome. Like that is one of the most underrated value points of this system, is that what it does motivationally and psychologically for the kids to earn more points, because it's all point based.
That's right.
48 is how you get freak, and so we have a kid stuck at 47 right now. So it's just like, man, how do we get you
he's
freaks?
grinding away to try to get that last point, huh?
100%.
Yeah. So as far as the points go, that's what really intrigues me, because I feel like there's been a lot of work that goes into, and we probably can't cover it as we only got about 5-10 minutes left here. But determining how you normalize your measurements into a total point system, where did that come from?
Time, troubleshooting, but frankly, best way to just kind of say exactly where it comes from, but still with using my best judgment and intuition, is percentiles. So like,
okay,
the 15th percentile for all the data that I've collected for that test, which it takes data first to be able to decide what that standard is. Because my population at FFF is very different from Madison Academy. So I would not
100%.
advise Cody Hughes to take my data pool and then use the same standards. I told Cade McGee that when he was at ACA. I said, dude, I know you really like our system here and you're really trying to adopt it over there, but please just take the time to just start fresh and just collect all your own data. Your kids have never tested RSI before, or, so you just can't take a trained population's standards and shift it over.
Good point.
Nonetheless, like, we have a lot of NFL kids here, NFL dad, NBA dads, that's Atlanta's just a little bit different. So anyway, the 15th percentile is what I determined is like the fit threshold. So 15th to 35th. 35th to 65th is fortified. So you get 2 points if you're in that percentile for that test, 3 points if you're 65th to 85th, and then 4 points if you're 85th to 100th percentile.
Got it.
But then, the standards need to change. As your whole population gets better at that test, then that 15th percentile used to be 10.2. Now it's actually like, 11. So it's like,
right.
The kids get a little disappointed because, things shift up, but like I pat myself on the back because I'm like, okay, we're all better now. We literally raised the bar. You talk about let's raise the bar. That's what happens. And so I experienced that at GAC when I went all in on it, like in 2018, and we just adopted this full system of like, no, we're going to measure this stuff diligently. And dude, I had to change the standards multiple times. So where like I was killing myself with my spreadsheets because I didn't make it user friendly enough to just input that new standard. I had to go and like pop the hood open and unscrew everything and screw it back in, like from an automation standpoint. But I finally got smart, knew that I was changing these standards more often than I thought. But probably by 2021, with that same population, I determined like these were the standards. Like, I wasn't going to change it very much. And I remember our head football coach at the time, it was like when I first implemented the standards for power clean, we just did a clean from the floor. And he's like, why is 205 as 205 pounds gets you like freak or something like that? Because in his mind, he's like, that's terrible. Like, that's so low. I'm like, Coach, we suck at power clean right now. Like, our kids, like, that's actually really good for most of our kids because we just hadn't done it, for that many years or that well. So this is the reality of like, trust me, like this is the standard now, or else the kids won't earn any sort of points or get any sort of credit for anything. And that you don't want that either. You don't want to have
you don't want to destroy confidence,
unachievable, because then the system is literally pointless. The whole point of that system is to take your population and bucket them accordingly, and then track progress. But it would be pretty demoralizing if I just put these standards up on the wall and nobody's even close to achieving any of it. So that's not helpful. Because we pick standards. You use it with Z-scores, or if you want, or I can do it with percentiles, or I can just pick that 225 as a standard for bench press. For like, it could be totally arbitrary, which I don't recommend. Whatever gets your program fired up, I guess. But at the end of the day, like, what's a more intelligent way to meet the needs of my athletes right now, and where are they right now? Because especially if you just got hired at a new school somewhere, you want to take the time to assess your population just to know how could I determine what good is for them, because it's all different. That's the first thing they ask. Coach, is that good? Like, is that good? As soon as you do a new test, like that's the first question they're asking, and you want to be able to say like, that's okay. Like, here's what I would consider good, and it's because of objective data, and it's because so and so over here is all state, and that's what he got. So let's get you there.
No doubt. Well, hey, to finish up here, this has all been really great information, just from systems in general. If somebody, there's plenty of really good strength coaches out here, and a lot of coaches in general that I feel like may feel like they're missing this piece, or numbers scare them, which I completely understand, because I know that there's not as many coaches out there that might not be as nerdy as we are, because we really enjoy that side.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still excellent coaches. They're really good at teaching. They're really good at understanding movement. They understand creating culture. If you were to give them any type of advice on, hey, I want to start exploring, trying to develop some type of data collection, what do you think they need to do first?
First is actually the bit of advice where they have some relief, because when I tell them this first thing, chances they're already doing it or have done it. It's like, decide on the 5 most important tests in your mind: vertical jump, pro agility, 40-yard dash, bench, squat. Boom. And just take those 5 or 7, but I usually say no more than 7 just to get started if they haven't really taken something. Where is all the data for those 5 things? Have you collected any up until this point? Some of them have it. They have some random Excel spreadsheet with tabs at the bottom of different, years or months. Football coaches, they have, it's pretty normal for a football coach to measure 40s every year. So surely there's that, right? And then just standardizing it. What is good? Maybe just percent rank formula in Google Sheets is pretty awesome. It's really easy. And you just type in, okay, what is the 15th percentile? So I typed it for percent rank. This kid, Cody Hughes, he ran a 4.9. So that percent rank, if I made it negative, because it's a negative thing, because it's seconds, then it will tell you the 15th percentile is a 502. And you can categorize it by skill. So we're probably largely shifting this towards football, but it doesn't have to be football necessarily. But just taking those 5 or 7 things, looking at the data, determining what your standards are, and then, Toby at Strong Rock does this, and it has done it for years, and maybe tie it into your school colors, or what would be the Patriot standard, and here's the black standard or blue, things like that, to now score it. To me, that is the ultimate value already of just giving the kids something to reach for. And so from a data collection standpoint, that's priority 1, is how do I keep these kids motivated, show them that they're getting better individually, and not give them some unachievable record board on the wall that they'll never be able to touch. That's just, every day they feel like a failure if they just look at that record board and that's it. There's no reference point for me getting better. So that's the purpose. Then stage 2, once you feel good with that for a year or so, is then how do I program differently with that? And that is entirely dependent on logistics of your class. Are there 2 of you in the room? Could you on one TV put multiple programs at once so the kids, can take themselves through it? Some people who operate on a whistle wouldn't do, well with that. So that gets into the weeds a little bit more of how do I actually implement a differentiation model, the way that every educator in our country is trying to figure out how to differentiate math from one student to another. It's all differentiation. So to me, those aren't the same things. Data collection and setting standards and grading and showing improvement is one element of it. And the second is taking that information then and how do I change how I teach and program and that kind of thing, and serve my kids better. Because I think everybody wants to do this, but they don't realize man, you got to have this in place first, or else you'll be killing yourself every semester with all your testing data and not making it automated. So that's where Rock Daisy comes in, and Google Sheets, if you take the time to build it, those automations and those inferences should happen instantly, or else you'll lose your mind, sifting through all the data. So
100%. Well, Rich, this has been amazing. Rich is an unbelievable mind. Man, I always love calling you, picking your brain on a lot of things. I've got a lot more questions. I want to hit you up on the back end here about your report, some things maybe I can adopt. But if somebody has more questions, maybe they want to expand off something they heard today and learn a little bit more, obviously we will link that 40-minute YouTube video about the categorizations in the show notes. So please go watch that if you want to learn more about that. But if they want to reach out for a question, where can they reach you? Where do you prefer that they reach you at?
Yeah, email's good. rich@triplefknoxville.com, or social media. I think it's rich_FFF in most cases. Instagram and Twitter are always good. And, one thing that I'm thinking about doing soon is like a little workshop for how to build like a basic Google Sheets version of this reporting structure, which doesn't get you to the finish line, but at least kind of gets you going. So I'll be talking more about that here soon, just trying to figure out the best kind of time to offer that. But yeah, man, I'm excited to just continue to help coaches collect data and organize it and figure out what's best for their program and their kids. So I love it. I'm
Hey,
always open to those conversations.
also, little plug for you here as well. I know that Matt Watson's coming over to the States with Plyomat and
He's
Plus
in
Plyos.
LA already, so he's in California. Sweet. That's where he lives now. So I'm trying to get him to move to Tennessee.
I didn't realize he lived in the States. Well, that's cool. Hey, he's coming to Knoxville, Tennessee. So if you're in the Southeast or within driving distance, if you want to come see their unbelievable facility at Triple F, I know that I am making my priority to be there. Rich, I'm coming. There's no way I'm missing that. What's the date on that?
It's a Sunday, November 3rd,
Okay.
10 to 4. So we'll have breakfast ready when you get here, feed you some lunch, and just deep dive into plyos, man. We'll be on the track outside. We'll be in the basketball court, turf, or a conference room. I mean, we're going to use every inch of this facility to make it an awesome experience. So
sweet. So yeah, we'll be on the lookout at Rich's social media on that. I'll also post things in the show notes here to learn more about that, get signed up, and come attend. So Rich, I appreciate you being here, man. I appreciate the conversation as always.
All right, man. Thanks.